welcome to How to Fix It, and to another Patreon-sponsored review. The final one of the year, in fact. Before Zack Snyder, before Christopher Nolan, before Paul Dini and Bruce Timm, there was Tim Burton. And then there was Joel Schumacher. Yeah, while it's pretty universal that the Tim Burton Batman movies are classics, much like the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, the quality dropped off considerably when the third movie came out. And I know everyone's already said their piece on the Joel Schumacher Batman movies, but the patron requested something a tad different. They requested that I look at the 4 movies as a unit. Instead of just fixing the bad movies, fix the entire series. And I really liked that idea. I've been toying with a Batman Forever video for ages, since it's the most redeemable of the Schumacher ones. In fact, I've been toying with it since November of 2014, the year that I started this show. But I kept putting it off for one reason or another. However, looking at all 4 of them, figuring out how to fix it as a series is a rather intriguing concept. For one thing, it gives me a lot more options because I'm giving myself reign over the entire series. Although I will admit there's not really a lot that I would change of the 2 Tim Burton ones, apart from some personal preferences, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. Are the 2 Joel Schumacher films as bad as everyone says they are? Probably. I mean, I like them as a kid, but I also liked a lot of stuff that I dislike as an adult, so there's probably room for improvement. And even so-called masterpieces can have elements that don't quite work. So, to the Batcave! So, we're going to do things a little differently this week because we have 4 movies to cover. I am going to try to do a super basic rundown of all 4 movies' plots, because if I fully summarized all 4 movies, this would be like an hour-long video, and no one, especially me, wants to hear that much of my voice. The first film, aptly titled Batman, is the origin story, though it doesn't start out with it, which is unique for your superhero origin movies. The mayor of Gotham orders the new DA, Harvey Dent, played by Billy D. Williams, and Commissioner Gordon, Pat Hingle, to make the city safer as the city's centennial celebration approaches. Before we shift out into Gotham itself, and we see a near repeat of Batman's origin, before the criminals run off with their loot, only to be confronted with the rumored Batman, who beats the crap out of them but leaves them alive so that they can warn their friends. Alexander Knox, a reporter for the Gotham City Gazette, is researching the Batman and the corruption in the city, but the police, especially Commissioner Gordon and Lieutenant Eckhart, are tight-lipped about the whole thing, mainly because Eckhart is on the payroll of a crime lord, Carl Grissom, played by the late Jack Palance. The only person willing to entertain Knox's Batman stuff is Vicky Vale, Kim Basinger, who is equally intrigued in the idea, trying to get info out of Gordon at one of Bruce Wayne's charity galas before running into Bruce Wayne himself as they snoop around. Bruce is odd and is called away suddenly, which intrigues Vale. Grissom's right-hand man, Jack Napier, played by the incomparable Jack Nicholson, is cavorting with Grissom's mistress on the side, so Grissom plans to off him by giving Eckhart a tip and hoping the cops would take care of it. Gordon gets wind and puts the kibosh on it, and Batman shows up, getting into a fight with Napier and knocking him into a vat of acid. Over the course of the film, Bruce and Vicky get closer as Napier returns, having survived, but has transformed into the clown prince of crime, the Joker. He attempts a takeover of Gotham and tries to get with Vicky Vale, to Bruce's chagrin. Bruce has to balance his Batman stuff with his romance stuff, and eventually learns an important detail about Jack Napier. Namely, a specific quote he says to people before they die. One that Bruce has heard before, right before Thomas and Martha Wayne were killed. Eventually, Vicky finds out about Batman's secret, and the Joker attempts to use Joker gas on the entire city, but Batman stops him and knocks him off a building to his death. Gotham is saved, for now, and Batman promises to be the hero that Gotham deserves. Batman returns as Bruce, having broken it off with Vicky Vale because they really wanted to do the Catwoman plot. No, really, I'm pretty sure that's the reason. And continuing being Gotham's savior, saving fellow industrialist Max Schreck, Christopher Walken, from a rogue gang of carnies at a public engagement. Though in the chaos, Schreck is taken into the sewers to meet with Oswald Cobblepot, played by
Donnie DeVito,
leader of the carnies and a deformed child of socialites who was banished to the sewers as a toddler, being raised by penguins. Though it's not really a shock that he's evil. Penguins are shifty bastards.
you didn't see anything.
Cobblepot blackmails Schreck with evidence of his crimes because, as he explains,
Remember, Max, you flush it, I flaunt it.
Schreck is about to do a deal with Bruce Wayne, and when his assistant, Selina Kyle, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, goes back to the office after hours to retrieve a file she forgot, she discovers that the power plant that Schreck claims to be building to power Gotham is really designed to drain Gotham's energy. That would be bad enough, but she happens to come across it right when Schreck returns, and to keep her quiet, he tosses her out the window. She's saved by magic cat venom or something, and following a psychotic break, she tears up a leather coat to become Catwoman. Cobblepot and Schreck make a big show of revealing Cobblepot to the world, using the Carney gang to kidnap the mayor's baby, and then have Cobblepot return it, making him a figure akin to Batman. Schreck also plans to depose the mayor and replace him with Cobblepot, thus ensuring that both of their plans succeed. Catwoman faces off against Batman a few times, trying to sabotage Schreck, while Bruce and Selina start a burgeoning relationship, and there is a hysterical scene when both Batman and Catwoman need to go out in costume, but they're on a date together, and they both have to make up excuses and rush away without the other one knowing. Catwoman allies herself with the Penguin to discredit Batman by framing him for murder and hijacking the Batmobile to turn it into Christine. Batman uses audio salvage from Penguin's gloating about hijacking the Batmobile and uses it against him, sullying his image and causing him to move up his actual plan, which is to steal all of Gotham's firstborn sons and kill them, but Batman manages to stop him. Following the failure, he attempts to use missile-loaded penguins to destroy Gotham, but Batman manages to redirect them all to fire on the Penguin's lair, causing him to fall into toxic sewage, which kills him. Catwoman goes after Schreck to kill him, but Batman reveals his identity and tries to get her to stop. But after Batman and her are shot by Schreck, she uses a taser to electrocute both her and Schreck while Batman is unconscious. The Penguin and Schreck are dead and the Carney gang disbanded, but Catwoman's body is nowhere to be found, and Catwoman watches as Bruce finds Selina's pet cat and takes her home. Batman Forever picks up a few years later, as Batman, now played by Val Kilmer, is going after Harvey Two-Face. Yes, that's seriously what they call him. Now played by Tommy Lee Jones, as opposed to Billy D. Williams. Also at the hostage scene is Dr. Chase Meridian, played by Nicole Kidman, a psychiatrist with insights into Two-Face's psychoses. Batman manages to succeed in saving the hostage, but loses Two-Face in the chaos. If you don't know who Two-Face is, he was deformed in an accident, in this case someone throwing acid on his face, and developed a second, twisted personality. Something that Bruce Wayne feels responsible for because he was only able to save half his face. Bruce also meets Dr. Edward Nygma, played by Jim Carrey, a scientist working for Wayne Enterprises who idolizes him, and presents Bruce with schematics for a device to beam television signals directly into a person's brain. Bruce is intrigued but wants time to think about it, which Nygma refuses, so Bruce passes. Nygma breaks and goes nuts, killing his supervisor and doctoring the footage using his new device, and starts sending Bruce Wayne riddles. Bruce and Chase go to a circus charity event and watch the Flying Graysons, as their youngest, Dick, played by Chris O'Donnell, does a netless trick that impresses the audience. Unfortunately, Two-Face shows up and hijacks the show, setting a bomb unless Batman shows his face. Bruce tries to reveal his identity to Harvey, but he can't hear the reveal, and so Bruce runs off to take out Two-Face's goons, while the Grayson family does their part as well. They manage to get the bomb out, sending Dick to dump it off the roof into the water, which he does, but while he does that, Two-Face knocks the rest of the Grayson clan off their perch, and they plummet into the netless ring. Bruce, feeling partially responsible, and knowing how Dick feels, invites him to live in Wayne Manor, which Dick reluctantly reluctantly agrees to, and is immediately curious about the only locked door in the entire mansion. Nigma, now going by the Riddler, teams up with Two-Face to take over the city, becoming an industrialist much like Bruce and marketing his device, named the Box, to the public. He uses the device to siphon intelligence from the people of Gotham, making him smarter, but also fueling his obsession with destroying Bruce Wayne, something that Two-Face disagrees with because he just wants general chaos. Dick, using his acrobatic skills, manages to sneak into the Batcave and steals the Batmobile, going into Gotham and getting into a scrape, saving a woman but requiring Batman to show up and rescue him. Dick is understandably pissed that Bruce is Batman and yet refuses to help Dick get revenge on Two-Face, something Bruce knows a lot about because of his parents' similar death and his revenge quest being fulfilled. Nigma throws a party, which Bruce and Chase, as they get closer, attend together, and Nigma uses the box on Bruce Wayne to discover a secret about his past. Two-Face crashes the party, and Dick, who also attended, rushes out to the car to retrieve his acrobat suit from Alfred so he can help save the day and fight Two-Face alongside Batman, and even saves Bruce's life. Bruce decides to stop being Batman in order to live a normal life with Chase, who he's fallen in love with, and because it would help Dick get over his demons, but he does it on the same night that Two-Face and Riddler watch the recording of Bruce's brainwaves, discovering a bat, and they immediately put two and two together. During dinner, Bruce reveals his identity to Chase, but Riddler and Two-Face arrive to kidnap her and destroy the Batcave. Riddler leaves a final riddle, allowing Bruce to finally figure out that Riddler is Nigma, and Robin and him suit up, using a new untested Batsuit and a Robin suit, Robin being Dick's family nickname that Alfred put together. They head to the villain's hideout, but on the way up, the dynamic duo are separated and Robin and Two-Face duke it out. But Two-Face gets the upper hand when Robin decides to spare his life, and Robin is captured. Batman makes it to Nigma, but he's given an ultimatum. He can only save one hostage, Chase or Robin. However, Batman destroys Riddler's box and puts him out of commission, allowing him to rush down and save both of the hostages before they head back up to take care of Two-Face. He flips a coin to decide their fate, but Batman grabs a bunch of coins from his belt and tosses them, confusing Two-Face and causing him to stumble to his death, getting revenge for Dick, but without needing Dick to carry the weight of the death. At Arkham, Riddler is detained and Chase examines him because he claims to know Batman's identity. Because of the feedback from the box, he believes that he is Batman, and Batman's identity is secure. Chase meets up with Bruce to tell him that before Batman and Robin go out to patrol Gotham. Batman and Robin picks up about a year later. Chase Meridian is nowhere to be seen because they really wanted to do the Bruce's duality plot again, despite the fact that they've done it in every single movie. And Batman is now played by George Clooney. Batman and Robin attempt to stop Mr. Freeze, Arnold Schwarzenegger, from stealing diamonds from the Gotham Museum, this version using the same sort of backstory as the DC animated universes, which is weird considering that Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero came out the following year, and knowing how animation works, these had to be put into production very close to the same time, so the fact that they did that is weird because of character fatigue and all. And the fact that this movie has two other villains that they could have had as the main one instead, but whatever. He escapes and nearly kills them, freezing Robin and giving Batman an ultimatum. Save Robin or stop him, and we start to notice some rifts forming between Batman and Robin. Meanwhile, in a South American research lab, Pamela Isley, Uma Thurman, is working with Jason Woodrue on plant stuff, but Woodrue is more interested in being a mad scientist, using her venom samples to genetically modify a serial killer and creates Bane. Isley sneaks in and discovers Woodrue's plans, which naturally horrifies her. Bane escapes when Woodrue supercharges him, causing Isley to give away her position. Woodrue isn't angry to find her. In fact, he's happy to offer her a chance to get in on the ground floor, but she refuses. He proceeds to knock her back into chemicals, giving her the power of super speed, which she uses to become the Flash. Oh, wait. No, she mutates and gains the power to control plants, becoming Poison Ivy, and uses her powers to kill Woodrue and take Bane, as she escapes to Gotham to take revenge on Woodrue's original benefactor, Wayne Enterprises. Bruce and Dick get into a fight regarding Dick's impulsiveness and Bruce not treating him like a full partner. Just sort of reminds me of better Batman stories where the same plot was used to better effect, namely Batman the Brave and the Bold. As Freeze puts in action his plan of taking Gotham hostage to force the city to fund his research and help him save his wife, Alfred's niece, Barbara, played by Alicia Silverstone, arrives at the manor to surprise her uncle. Bruce agrees to let her stay, and Barbara reveals a darker side as she sneaks out and steals a motorcycle from the garage. Ivy arrives and heads to Gotham Observatory to confront Bruce at a charity event where Bruce and his new love interest, who I'm not even gonna name because she is so irrelevant it's not even funny, and Bruce shrugs her off, much in the same way that he did Enigma in the last movie, telling her about Batman and Robin doing a charity event for the Botanical Gardens later on. Over the course of the film, Batman and Robin get into a public altercation at their event designed to draw out Freeze, thanks to Ivy's pheromones brainwashing them, leading into the most famous scene from this film.
7 million. Never leave the cave without it.
Freeze shows up and steals the diamond before escaping while Batman and Robin are distracted. Later on, Ivy decides to team up with Freeze, busting him out of Arkham, and Batman disables Robin's bike while they're on a mission against Robin's wishes. Robin discovers 2 bombshells. One, that Alfred has McGregor's syndrome, the same affliction that Freeze's wife has, and 2, that Barbara has been going out on drag races to raise money for Alfred's treatment. Which is exactly what Wally West was doing on The Flash when he was first introduced. Actually, now that I think about it, Wally and Iris's mom also had McGregor's syndrome. Not a good sign that a Batman movie is making me want to go watch The Flash, eh? Batman and Robin discover the chamber holding Freeze's wife, and Ivy damages it, telling Freeze that Batman did it and manipulating Freeze into taking revenge on humanity with her. Alfred's condition worsens as Freeze and Ivy freeze Gotham, and Batman and Robin are on the outs. Barbara eventually finds the Batcave and an AI version of Alfred, no doubt a prototype of the one from Future's End, that instructs her and gives Barbara her own Batsuit. Ironically, the only one in the movie that doesn't have pronounced nipple armor. Why is that even a thing? Batman and Robin get over their issues, and Batgirl arrives to help the dynamic duo. Together they take down the villains, stopping Bane, defeating Ivy, and telling Freeze that his wife is still alive, and that Ivy was the one who damaged the chamber. The baddies are remanded to Gotham, where Freeze and Ivy are cellmates, and Freeze atones for his crimes by giving Batman the first-stage cure for McGregor's that he developed. Too late to save his wife, but right on time to save Alfred. The movie ending with the entire group happy and ready to continue taking on the crime-ridden city that they all now call home. So we're going to do things a little bit differently in the middle 2 sections. I'm going to start with my thoughts on the positive aspects of the entire series, and once I finish that, move on to specific elements of each individual film that I want to take special note of. First up, Danny Elfman's soundtrack for the first 2 is utterly beautiful, and the music doesn't really noticeably get worse between the last 2. The music is actually pretty solid throughout, just a shame that the dramatic, awesome soundtrack underscores the scene of Batman and Robin surfing on doors. The aesthetic and cinematography are great as well, though I'm less enthused with the Schumacher ones. The designs are still interesting and unique. I feel like Gotham gets ridiculous in the Schumacher ones and resembles the type of city that a kid might make with action figures. Not bad for a superhero movie, but I'll get into the problems it has later. The casts are good for the most part too, my highlights being Keaton and Kilmer as Bruce Wayne, Michael Gough as a brilliant and personally my second favorite Alfred after the DC animated version, Kim Basinger, Jack Nicholson, Michelle Pfeiffer, Danny DeVito, Christopher Walken, Chris O'Donnell, and Jim Carrey. Alfred in particular is probably the highlight of the entire series because he's the voice of reason, and like most Alfreds, snarky as hell and hilarious. And up until the final movie, the costuming was really good. I appreciate that they're willing to mimic the comic book suits to an extent, especially with Robin in Batman Forever. Obviously, they can't do the crazy acrobatics and fighting with the circus outfit, but the fact that it was Robin's starter before he gets the reinforced bulletproof suit is is a nice touch. Considering that we spent like a decade with live-action superhero properties refusing to use the comic costumes after this, Smallville, I really dig it. And, like many have noted, despite the actor change, there is a character arc between them for Batman, and Bruce Wayne becomes way less closed off by the end of it. Definitely helped by the fact that Batman becomes a public figure in the last two movies. Sure, that auction bidding scene with the Chiroptera bank card is stupid, but think about how different that is from the Batman we saw in the first movie, where he stayed in the shadows. Bruce Wayne barely attended the functions he was a part of and kept to himself, but by the end he was making public appearances and adopting wayward orphans. While I do wish that Keaton could have displayed that change through acting, Kilmer and Clooney don't do a bad job of continuing the arc. Though I really just can't see Clooney as Batman for some reason. Maybe it's because he didn't put on a distinct spin on Batman like the other two actors did, but he manages to complete the arc. Batman manages to get back what Napier took from him. A family. I also like how Gotham develops, and it's still a cesspool, but by the fourth movie, it's not nearly as bad as it was in the first movie, thanks to Batman, and it's showing us that Batman is making a difference. I also like how they did try to get the entire Bat family dynamic going with introducing Robin and Batgirl, though I wish they didn't wait until the last movie to do it. And while the writing takes a noticeable drop in the third and fourth installments, especially the fourth, it's still relatively solid, and the movies aren't quite as bad as Superman 3 and 4 are. The motivations are believable, for the most part. I'll get to the ones that aren't later, and they do feel like they're part of a series, with the tone changing, but not becoming entirely alien. On to the specific stuff. The first two movies are just really good in general, and Batman Returns might be my favorite of the entire series, apart from some stuff that I really just like about Forever. The writing is top-notch, the humor is there, despite the darker subject matter, and all the actors, not just the ones I noted at the beginning, put in great performances. And while I don't really like the darker gothic aesthetic and making Penguin deformed, I also don't find it to be a detriment. In addition, the first one has Jack frigging Palance, and the second one has Pee Wee Herman and Queen Bathsheba as Penguin's parents. Really, the first two movies are really solid. On to Forever, Jim Carrey is a really good Riddler, and he's the best cast character, though I did read somewhere that they originally wanted Robin Williams, which would have been even better. As it stands, though, that worked, and I also really like Chris O'Donnell in the movie. He was fighting an uphill battle because he was a departure for the role, being of Nightwing age when Robin was created, as opposed to the traditional Dick Grayson age 12, and in some ways it can be considered homage to Burt Ward's portrayal, so it works. Tommy Lee Jones isn't bad as Two-Face, though I feel like they really wanted the Joker, considering the Chaos angle and the team-up with the Riddler. Two-Face has always seemed to me like an on-his-own sort of villain, whereas the Joker is willing to team up with Batman's other enemies when it's convenient. Though, I admit it might just be my own perception of the character based on what I've seen and read. Otherwise, he's decent. Batman and Robin. Schwarzenegger isn't a bad actor, and he can believably play the tormented Victor Fries. I also like how they put him in the position of being an intelligent scientist, which is definitely atypical of the sort of stuff that you think when you hear the word Arnold Schwarzenegger. And a lot of people hate the puns, but I actually think they're pretty harmless. I also really like the introduction of Batgirl, and don't mind so much that she's been changed to being related to Alfred as opposed to Gordon, because it keeps her closer to the action. Do I wish that she had been inspired on her own and not because Alfred needed her to? Yes, but this movie was overloaded as it is, so I gave that a pass. On the same note, Alicia Silverstone is really good as Batgirl, and does good with the crappy dialogue that she was given. I also like that, again, we embrace the comics, especially with Bane, who looks like he was pulled straight off the page. In addition, the stuff with Alfred's illness isn't too heavy-handed, and it's a pretty good way to show the audience that something is wrong before Batman and Robin know, with his desire for family and telling Bruce that he won't be around forever, especially how he walks away when they talk about Freeze's wife's condition. Subtle, but noticeable. First and foremost, they shouldn't have gotten rid of Knox after the first one. Batman having a guy in the press who's on his side could have made for an interesting ally in the other three. Plus, Knox was just a fun character. I'm doubly disappointed that he hasn't shown up in the comics, considering how we've seen film TV characters make the jump before, and Knox was cool. I also think that Schumacher made some poor decisions with embracing the comic book stuff a little too much in the final two. Made Gotham feel less genuine and more like a set than a real city. The Bruce random woman romance plot feels like too much of a retread after Returns. The stuff with Vicky Vale was fine because it was the first movie and the first time they did it, and the second one was sort of a retread, but the dynamic with Selina Kyle was different enough that it didn't entirely feel like a retread. Once Forever rolls around, it's basically the same dynamic as with Vicky Vale, with the duality and the should I tell her I'm Batman stuff, and then in the last movie, I barely even remembered that there was a romance plot because the woman was such a non-entity. Does she even show up after the first half of the film? I don't remember. Losing Keaton was a detriment because he brought a lot to the role. Same with Kilmer. I just don't think that Clooney felt like Bruce Wayne. Also, I don't like that they killed the Joker. Making him Batman's parents' killer made it necessary, and cinematic universes weren't a thing yet, but I prefer the Joker to be able to recur because he's so iconic. On to the specifics, Returns is a little bit too overloaded with the three villains. It's like Spider-Man 3, though Returns has a much tighter story, it's still a lot for a 2-hour film. Batman and Robin is similarly overloaded and lacks the tight story that makes me forgive Returns. In fact, if you hadn't noticed, my summaries for the Schumacher ones were double the size of the Burton summaries because the first two had simple enough plots that I was able to condense it into a reasonable summary and still get to make jokes related to specific scenes. For the final two, I tried my hardest to condense it, but there were a lot of things I had to explain so I could refer back to them later, and it ended up making the basic summary way longer than I would have liked. In Forever, they keep calling Two-Face Harvey Two-Face, which is a really stupid name. Additionally, the Two-Face plot is really damn weak. The movie should have either focused on Harvey's turn, like in The Dark Knight, where he's sympathetic and this is his first spree, or not recasted him, which would have been even more reinforced if they kept Billy D. Williams around as Harvey, since we'd have known Harvey from the first one, however briefly, and his turn would have emotional weight. I don't care about Bruce's guilt over Two-Face because we've only just met this Bruce-Two-Face dynamic. Moving on to Batman and Robin, Poison Ivy feels like a retread of Nigma with her entire backstory featuring a lot of the same beats, and even her first meeting with Bruce Wayne goes about the same way. In addition, while the writing of the first three remains solid, the writing of Batman and Robin takes a significant nosedive. The first line of the damn movie is Robin being petulant and whiny, and it doesn't get any better from there. I feel like that movie could have benefited from the virtue of silence and showing not telling. And of course, the nipple armor. What possible tactical or defensive use does that have? It's stupid. Though, based on this concept art that I saw online that's purportedly from the development cycle, it could have been much worse. There's also the fact that the movie keeps reminding me of better superhero media, which is a cardinal sin. Finally, this is minor, but I just have to mention it. What the hell is up with that goofy scene of Robin doing laundry foo in Batman Forever? It reeks of the writer having finished the screenplay, handed it in, and then gotten asked after the executives finished reading it. Wait, how does Robin know how to do all the martial arts if he was never trained? And the writer went, shit! And just added this scene to compensate. I say that because in taking screenwriting classes in college, I've done that, as someone who was learning the craft. It's also unrealistic because he doesn't try to unball a sock by flailing it around, only to whack himself in the junk and end up doubled over on the laundry room floor. What, does that not happen to anyone else? First off, because this is the most obvious and the one that most people would highlight, I would find a way to keep Keaton for the entire run. At the very least, I'd have retained Kilmer for the last two. I just really don't like George Clooney as Batman. Kilmer, I feel, had more of the range required, and I feel like Clooney is also too recognizable to be Batman. In addition, I'd have not gotten rid of Knox or Vicky Vale. I think they would have helped the other movies if Batman had people in the press, and it hopefully would have saved us from that grating gossip columnist. And I know, she was Bob Kane's widow, I just think the character was poorly written. Just a personal feeling, though. The big one for me, for the entire series, is for the love of Highfather, stop retreading the romance plot. Either keep Vicky Vale in all four and have Bruce's duality play out over the entire series, or cut those threads loose. Why was the woman even around in the fourth movie when she is entirely superfluous? Another big one is I wouldn't have overloaded the movies with iconic villains. One, maybe two per film. Joker was a good one for the first, and having Catwoman as an anti-hero love interest made it less bloated, but by Batman and Robin, it is ridiculous. Freeze, Bane, Ivy, and even technically Floronic Man as the villain of Ivy's backstory? Here's my series. Batman is just Joker, returns as Penguin and Catwoman, with Shrek on the side, Forever is Riddler and maybe Two-Face if Billy D. Williams returns, and Batman and Robin jettisons Bane and Ivy. Just Mr. Freeze, who is enough to carry the entire movie, in my humble opinion. I would also tone down the comic book stuff, or find a happy medium between the aesthetics. And that's saying something because I love goofy comic book stuff. It just clashes too much with the established tone. I'd probably keep Gotham looking mostly realistic, save for the villains' hideouts, and let those look as goofy as they can. I don't hate Joel Schumacher as much as a lot of people do, but personally, I'd have retained Tim Burton and his aesthetics. I just feel like they fit the tone better and gave a more realistic Gotham. I feel like Harvey is supposed to be a conflicted character, but here he's just full-on evil. The movie should have either been his origin where he isn't redeemed but saved like he is in most Batman stories, like Batman vs. Two-Face or the Batman animated series. There's a reason that Batman cares about Harvey getting better in most versions of the story, and it would give a lot more of an emotional punch. And like I said before, keeping Billy D would have saved a lot of the Two-Face stuff. Speaking of weak villains, I would have found a way to give Ivy's backstory something that keep it distinct from Nigma. Insane Scientist from Wayne Enterprises just doesn't have the same punch 2 movies in a row. Maybe disconnecting her from the company and she just comes to Gotham to find a rare plant that Bruce owns or something. And an overall polish of the writing so the clearly adult Robin doesn't sound like a whiny, petulant child when the entire plot is supposed to center around Batman's trust issues. Batman should be the unreasonable one, not Robin. And I would have simplified the 2 Schumacher movies, giving them the tight, simple stories that made the first 2 so iconic. Though that basically boils down to not losing Sam Hamm as a writer. Ultimately, that is the biggest fix. Story is key, and if the writing was better for the Schumacher movies, I think we'd all look past the goofier, silly elements because the story would enhance them. I could do a full fix and constructive treatment for my version of the movies, but I don't think that's necessary since I don't hate everything about the Schumacher entries. And of course, I'd have not added nipple armor to the Batsuits because why? And that was the Batman film series, an overall enjoyable series that made some missteps, but maybe not as major as everyone thought. I am a lover of garbage cinema, I will freely admit that, but I can look critically, and I don't think that the final 2 entries in the series deserve as much vitriol as they've gotten over the years. Certainly not as much as it's gotten from certain critics. You're free to your own opinion, but I think that the series had all the material it needed to become a classic like the mythos that inspired it. But between the changing leading men, changed production staff, and conflicting tones, the series got a little chaotic towards the end. Not great, but not entirely the worst series ever. I still maintain that Superman 3 and 4 are worse. Probably should cover those sometime. I do own all of them. In the meantime, next week December begins, and so does our shift to looking at some holiday offerings. And yes, I did say holiday, and no, it's not because I'm being politically correct. Not all the content we'll be tackling this year will be Christmas related. But the week after next, I want to take the opportunity to kill two birds with one stone. Last week was the 55th anniversary of Doctor Who, and as such, I want to take a look at a Doctor Who holiday offering. And it just so happens that I've gotten my hands on an anthology that features 12 Doctor Who themed Christmas stories. Which one am I going to cover? I could choose, but I'd rather leave that to you guys. So go to the link below, or in the description to vote, on which of the 12 stories we'll be covering. See you next time.